Hey Pretty Girl Club. So I wanted to make this follow-up video today because earlier I was talking about how there's sort of like this love-hate relationship with the MLS community. And today when I was driving, I was listening to this Chris Brown song, and it actually reminded me of how Chris Brown and Rihanna, those two are actually a perfect example of the love-hate relationship that the Black community has with mixed race slash light skinned people. So let's start off with Rihanna as an example. When I think of Rihanna, I think of someone who she can sing, she can dance, but she may not be quite on the same level as like Beyonce. I would actually put Rihanna on the same level as Kelly Rowland in terms of vocals, in terms of beauty, in terms of talent. But why is it that the Black community rallied behind Rihanna and left Kelly Rowland in the dust? And it's so funny because almost every time Kelly Rowland has popped up on my YouTube suggested page, she's always talking about Beyonce or talking about colorism. And it's so funny because we like to blame things like colorism, texturism, featureism as to why Kelly Rowland is not on the same level as someone like Rihanna. But in my opinion, Rihanna is no better than Kelly Rowland in beauty or in talent or anything like that. The reason that I feel Rihanna was pushed to the forefront is because the Black community, aka Black women, they were the ones listening to Shine Bright Like a Diamond. They were the ones listening to the Umbrella song or, all those songs that Rihanna was putting out. Kelly Rowland was releasing music. She has released music over the last, 20 years or so. But Kelly Rowland never seemed to pop off. And I've noticed there's this pattern in the African American community where the MLS people, we are seen as, we're supposed to be seen as the face of the Black community because in the Black community, they view us as the beauty standard. I've noticed that some people in the Black community, they want us at the forefront of things like politics. If you look at the history of the civil rights movement, oftentimes it was people who were mixed race or people who were quote unquote light skinned who were some of the forerunners of the civil rights movement. And it's not necessarily because us MLS people came in and took over or like we tried to replace Black people, like how they're saying now, like we're suddenly just replacing people, like we're just coming in, usurping all the resources, usurping all of the conversations. No. We have historically been pushed to the forefront. We have historically been pedestalized by unambiguous people in the Black community. So yes, I do believe that racism, colorism, texturism, and featureism was started by white people, but I believe that it was continued by unambiguous monoracial Black people, whether that's the men or the women, because I have heard both men and women make comments like, oh, don't go out in the sun, or you have good hair, or you have bad hair, or things like that. I haven't seen a white person make those types of comments in a very long time. I'm not saying that white people or non-Black people can't be racist, but I'm saying that Rihanna is a great example of the love-hate relationship we have with MLS people, because it's like, on the one hand, you feel like they only got to where they are because of colorism, texturism, featureism, and anti-Blackness, but on the other hand, you spend all of your money at Fenty Beauty. I'm sure there are some unambiguous women who have makeup lines, or I'm sure that some unambiguous people can start makeup lines, or you can buy your makeup from other people. But no, you choose to support Fenty Beauty. You chose to replay Rihanna songs over and over and over again. And when it comes to Chris Brown is one of the most controversial music artists of all time. He has a history of treating women horribly. He has a history of doing some disgusting things, yet because a lot of unambiguous monoracial Black women are attracted to him and think that he's cute, and because he's their crush, and because they're spending over $1,000 of their own rent money to be seen taking pictures with him, they totally ignore all of his red flags and they still bump his music. Chris Brown still has a career to this day. And then at the same time, when Chris Brown only dates fellow MLS women, because I recently saw him in a video dancing with the singer Tyla, who is another MLS woman from South Africa. She's also mixed race. Okay, I had to literally stop in the middle of my editing process because I just saw a Lipstick Alley thread about Chris Brown being seen dancing with Tyla, and they are literally calling Tyla booty lips, like on Lipstick Alley, saying that her lips look like a booty, like they're big and like ugly, basically. If I were to ever fix my mouth to talk crap about an unambiguous Black woman's lips, I would be called all kinds of racist and futurist. Yet it's okay for people to talk about Tyla's lips not being cute. I saw that they were also talking about her body, saying how she's like too skinny, like she basically doesn't have a butt. So Again, this represents the love-hate relationship that the African American community has with mixed race people, where it's like, okay, you love to hate us, but at the same time, you're still bumping Tyla's music, though. Like, you're still listening to her music, you're still keeping up with her career, which is ultimately making her richer. But when these same artists, when they only date MLS people, then suddenly you want to get mad at them. So it's like you got mad at Chris Brown and you called him a colorist, texturist, and featurist because, you know, in his music, he talks about being light-skinned and how he likes being light-skinned. And he talks about the types of women he dates or whatever who tend to be mixed race women. And then you also got mad at Rihanna because she dated a supposed colorist, A$AP Rocky or whatever. I don't remember what A$AP Rocky did, but all I know is that he is seen as a colorist. So you're mad at Rihanna because she dated a colorist. And it's like, you guys push these people to the forefront. Chris Brown would not be where he is today if it weren't for Black women and men supporting him. Rihanna would not be where she is today if it weren't for Black women and men supporting her. So once again, people love to push us to the forefront, and then once we actually are in the forefront, and once we actually get that success, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, once we actually get kind of that clout that other people have kind of thrust upon us, then suddenly it's, oh, you only got to where you are because of colorism, texturism, featurism, or privileges. And, you know, you essentially don't deserve to be where you are. But it's like your community, the unambiguous monoracial dark-skinned community, pushed us to this position in the first place. You think that there weren't other men, dark-skinned Black men, who were maybe just as passionate as Malcolm X, maybe just as talented, or just as, you know, like, just as much of a forerunner in the civil rights movement as Malcolm X? You think he was the only one that could possibly be a leader in the Black community? You think Rosa Parks was the only person that cared about civil rights? I'm sure there were tens of thousands of dark-skinned, unambiguous, monoracial women who cared about civil rights as well. So to say that we just come in and we just take over everything, or we just, you know, kind of push our way and kind of boss hog our way to the top, that's completely false. Oftentimes, because monoracial unambiguous people are afraid to represent their own phenotype, or they're afraid of criticism, or they are afraid of not being accepted, oftentimes because of their own inferiority complexes, they push us to the forefront because they feel like we are quote unquote safe brown, or we're the more safe, more palatable Black person or whatever. So it's like, we are not the ones who are perpetuating this narrative. Oftentimes it's people in unambiguous communities who are perpetuating this narrative. If the average mixed race person were to walk into a room and say, hey, I'm the more palatable Black person here, usually that would be considered extremely offensive, right? So the main people who espoused that talking point were people who were unambiguous monoracials, whether they were men or women. Usually it was the dark-skinned Black people that said, oh, you got the good hair. Oh, you got, you know, you're light-skinned. First of all, skinned is not even a word, but they'll say things like, oh, you're light-skinned, or they'll say you're high yellow, or they'll like name all of these nicknames for you. And then if you later on show any form of self-love, or if you kind of use that 15 minutes of fame like Rihanna did, if you use your 15 minutes of fame to create $1 billion empire, then suddenly, hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. I only wanted to give you a certain level of privilege so that I could kind of shield myself from my own failures. Sometimes I feel like a lot of people in the unambiguous Black community, they try to hide behind things like colorism, texturism, featurism, racism, and anti-Blackness. And so as a way to kind of soothe their own inferiority complexes, sometimes they want to push us to the forefront, and then they expect MLS people to be social justice warriors like Jesse Williams or Colin Kaepernick or whatever. They expect us to be the biggest social justice warriors of them all. And then let's say we do become those social justice warriors like Rosa Parks and Malcolm X. Then with all of these newfound privileges that the unambiguous community has, then they have the audacity to turn around and say, oh, well, you know, light skins don't do shit for the Black community. Or, by the way, a Black woman empowerment creator actually said that on her YouTube channel.
You do not use your ability as a light-skinned person to do much of anything either. Why is it always dark-skinned women in the Black community doing shit? Light skins don't do shit, but then get all the praise, all the notoriety, all the exposure. You know how many ugly light-skinned people I know? You know how many light-skinned people I've seen that look like goddamn SpongeBob? You know how many light-skinned people I know that look like a goddamn spaghetti noodle, ramen noodle ass bitch? No one's jealous of y'all. Also, to the light skins that got mad at my other video when I was reacting to Bella Pink, I'm saying if you are going to talk about dark-skinned people, it should be something positive because, bitch, you need to recognize your damn privilege. You guys are disrespectful whenever we talk about any of our issues. Anytime we do speak about any of our issues, either whether it's in a whether it's in a calm way or a loud way or whatever the case may be, it's always deemed as, oh, you guys are so angry, you guys complain all the time, you're just mad that you're ugly, you're mad that you're dark, you're mad that I'm light, and you're mad that I'm beautiful. No! We're mad because you don't listen. We're mad because you don't recognize that you have the upper hand in a lot of situations.
Or they have the audacity to say that, your hair texture is cursed because you have type 3 hair, or that you're mediocre. How are we mediocre if we came from black women? We came from black women. We came from black men. So there's no way that we can be mediocre because we came from the blueprint, right? I thought you guys were the blueprint. I thought your melanin was popping. I thought that you guys are the queens and you have the Eve gene. So if we are your relatives, literally your sons and daughters, literally your grandsons, your granddaughters, there's no way we could be mediocre because we're still related to you. So I'm no longer going to tolerate being treated like some sort of redheaded stepchild of the black community. A lot of people in the pro-black spaces have said that we need to acknowledge our privileges, we need to acknowledge our differences, and so that's what this channel is. We are acknowledging our differences, we are acknowledging our privileges, and yes, we will be stacking those privileges to succeed in whatever ways we see fit. By the way, everyone should be doing this, not just MLS people. And I don't want to hear any complaining about it because people love to tell us to get out of their spaces, but then again, you love to come to our spaces. You tell us to get out of your spaces, but then you get mad when Chris Brown won't let you in his section. You tell us to get out of your spaces, but then a lot of black men get mad if Doja Cat doesn't date unambiguous black men. So which one is it? Either you want us to get out of your spaces and you actually mean it, meaning that we don't date you, we don't procreate with you, we don't do anything with you, or you're just being willfully obtuse and you're trying to pretend like MLS people somehow don't matter or like we somehow haven't contributed and straight up built the black community as a whole. And I'm not saying that unambiguous people have not done anything in the black community because they definitely have, but to discount MLS people and to say that anything that we have in this world is only due to colorism, texturism, featureism, anti-blackness, or pretty privilege, that's laughable because Kelly Rowland has just as much pretty privilege as Rihanna, right? Kelly Rowland has just as much talent as Rihanna, right? So why is Kelly Rowland not in the same place as Rihanna? It's because Kelly Rowland herself doesn't have the same work ethic as Rihanna. It's because Kelly Rowland herself did not have the same level of support from the black community as Rihanna. And by the way, both of these women, both Rihanna and Kelly Rowland, mainly have a black woman audience. So if that doesn't expose who black women really support or who black women really want to look like or who black women really, view as their dream girl, I don't know what does. Oftentimes I will see women complaining and they'll say that the entertainment industry is colorist, texturist, and featurist. And I'm not saying that it's not. But what's not going to solve colorism, texturism, and featureism is if you continue talking about Ice Spice or kind of promoting these artists. You don't realize that by simply making all these YouTube videos about Ice Spice and Mariah the Scientist and all these other people and Tyla, by making all these blog posts about them, talking about them, you're still promoting them, sis. This is similar to how the Kardashians became famous. They became famous because they were getting so much bad press to the point where they were actually able to capitalize off of that bad press and get their bags. And so MLS women are no different. I feel like it would actually be a better solution to talk about up and coming unambiguous, music artists and stuff that don't get enough shine or whatever, and then to promote their music. But nope. For a lot of people, it's easier to tear down the person that you feel is above you as opposed to working on building yourself up. So it's okay, you want to crush on somebody like Chris Brown, and then you want to get mad when Chris Brown makes a song about light-skinned women or when he makes a song calling himself light-skinned. So you're just mad because he doesn't want to date you or whatever. You're mad because he doesn't prefer you. Meanwhile, he has a horrible history. He has a disgusting history with how he treated women, but that doesn't matter. You don't actually care about if women get abused. You're just mad because you want him to pick you. If that's not pick me culture, I don't know what is. But ladies, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever experienced how a lot of people, they will throw others in and out of the Black community? They'll try to maybe discredit your success or discredit the success of others who look like you, and they will say that it's only due to their privileges. By the way, I'm not saying that privileges don't play into your success, but to put an entire person's career success only on privileges is just silly to me. And to put an entire person's failures only on their disadvantages and to view Blackness as a handicap, that is actually extremely anti-Black. Like, in my opinion, I never saw Blackness as a handicap. Like, I never viewed Kelly Rowland or Viola Davis as somehow being ugly. It's so funny because I've had some unambiguous women try to come onto my channel and they'll say, oh, how come you only use like Viola Davis or like Whoopi Goldberg or actual unambiguous women as examples of what an unambiguous woman looks like? Why don't you use someone who is pretty? And I'm like, first of all, Viola Davis is my favorite actress. Secondly, I never thought Viola Davis was ugly. I never thought Whoopi Goldberg was ugly. You are the one who thinks that they are ugly. And by the way, somebody else tried to say, oh, you're using like younger MLS women as examples, and then you use older women as examples of unambiguous women. That is false. Halle Berry is what, 55 or something like that? Sade, she's like 60 something years old, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe in her 50s at the youngest. So no, Halle Berry and Sade, they are around the same age as people like Viola Davis. So just because you, deep down inside, view Sade and Halle Berry as prettier than Viola Davis or other unambiguous women, that is your internalized beauty standard, not mine. Because I have not once come onto this channel saying like, oh, you know, if you look like Halle Berry, you're prettier than someone who looks like Viola Davis. No, I've never even done that. But in order to appease people who feel their own inferiority complexes, I've tried my best to find whatever other unambiguous women I can find, like Kelly Rowland or Tika Sumpter or whoever, to use as examples. But it's like, first of all, I shouldn't even be the one doing this. I shouldn't be the one having to find unambiguous monoracial women as examples of beauty. This is something that should be done in the Black women empowerment space, where they promote unambiguous beauty. Why am I over here in the MLS space having to search through hundreds of thousands of Google images trying to find a natural unambiguous woman who hasn't like bleached or hasn't like had a nose job or a boob job? And by the way, let's talk about that while I'm on the subject. Has anyone ever noticed how when it comes to MLS women, people love calling out if you got a nose job. People love calling out if you got a boob job. People love calling out if you're half a shade lighter or if you bleached yourself or if you like did all of these different things to your body. Why does no one keep that same energy with Kelly Rowland? Why doesn't anyone call out Tika Sumpter's nose job? Why doesn't anyone care about if an unambiguous actress gets a whole bunch of surgeries? That's because deep down inside, they don't view unambiguous women as having the same pretty privilege despite the surgeries. So that's why nobody cares. It's because all of their focus is on the ones that they pedestalize the most, which happens to be MLS people. Whether it's men or the women, my unpopular opinion when it comes to MLS men is that a lot of unambiguous women would actually prefer to date a man who is lighter than them. And I know this because when the colorism movement first started, one of their main talking points was they were upset because they feel like when it comes to love stories and love movies, the woman was always lighter than the man. And so they wanted that to be changed. They wanted it to be where it's a darker woman with a man who's lighter than her. So it's funny because if the woman is lighter than the man, that's colorism. But if the man is lighter than the woman, that's somehow not colorism. So my theory is that a lot of unambiguous Black women actually do prefer, or they deep down inside did want to be with a man who is lighter than them. It doesn't mean he has to be, mixed race or biracial or whatever. But a lot of unambiguous Black women, they did want access. They wanted sexual access or romantic access to men who were lighter than them. Men who looked like Chris Brown or Michael Ealy or whatever, Hill Harper, the Bridgerton guy, Prison Bae, or even darker skinned mixed race men. A lot of those women, they did want access to men like that. And once they saw that they could not have that access for whatever reason, they started calling it colorism or whatever, or saying that like it's not fair that the woman is always lighter than the man. They never show a darker woman with a lighter man in the love movies. And then they straight up divested and said, since we can't have these men, we will birth them and we will create mixed race men to be our sons. And have you ever noticed how, like, when it comes to the whole you're going to age badly argument and you have bad skin argument, they love using this argument against mixed race women, like, oh, you know, you have Neanderthal genes and stuff like that. But then they will turn around and go seek after a quote unquote Neanderthal and say that he is a zaddy and that he has bubblegum peen, or they will say, once you go Asian, your credit gets to raisin. And then they'll have all of these positive stereotypes, or like pedestalizing and fetishizing stereotypes about non-black men. And it's like, where's that energy when it comes to white men? I thought you just said that white people age badly. So wouldn't that mean that your white zaddy would age badly? Wouldn't that mean that your mixed race daughters that you're going to birth in the future would age badly? Because you just said we're like mediocre, right? And we look like ramen noodle head ass bitches. So wouldn't that mean that your own children would be ramen noodle head ass bitches? It's the situational hypocrisy for me. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Have you ever noticed any of this hypocrisy, especially when it comes to the music industry? Because a lot of the black community, they'll say like, oh, everybody's colorist, texturist, featurist. But then when it comes to who you're listening to on your playlist, you're listening to colorist black men or whatever, rappers. And then you're listening to rappers who are girls who are light-skinned or whatever, or mixed race. So I would just say, keep that same energy. If you truly do only want to see, or you want to see more unambiguous dark-skinned artists in the music industry, find them. Find them on iTunes or whatever and start listening to them and start promoting them, as opposed to making entire dissertations about how Mariah the Scientist is mediocre and then watching all of her performances so that you can cut clips and say, this is why she's mediocre. You're still giving her views. You're still giving her attention. You're still giving her free promo. And there will always be somebody who hasn't heard of her, like myself. I had never even heard of Mariah the Scientist. I had never heard of her. I had never heard of Ice Spice until I saw all of these colorism videos popping up on my feed. And then I went and searched their music and I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. Same thing with Tyla, actually, because I'm not really on TikTok like that. So I had never heard of Tyla until I saw people like on my comments or on other YouTubers' comment section saying like, oh, this is just another person that's like colored or whatever from South Africa that has made it. Like, what do you guys think of her? And I'm just like, you guys are literally building hype for these artists that you claim to dislike. You're literally building hype for Chris Brown by making videos saying that you're mad that you couldn't get in his section or that he's a colorist because he won't date you. You're literally hyping him up on a pedestal as if he is actually desirable for dating. It's laughable to me. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.